Eh, Hi guys. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Do you guys know what is consideration must not be passed? Consideration must not be passed is a promise or act to have a legal consideration, and it must be accompanied by something given, done, or promised in written by the other party. Do you guys know if one party provides something of value without reserving anything in return, it cannot be considered as valid consideration? Consideration must be given in exchange for a promise or act. If one party completes performance before the other offers consideration, it is unlikely that the early performance was done in return for that consideration.
Hi, this video is about the concept of consideration must not be passed. First, for consideration to be valid, a mutual agreement must be made within both parties before the act was performed. If one party acts on its own without the other party knowing, it will be considered as voluntary and not a mutual agreement. Second, it takes someone's sincerity to perform the act without expecting anything in return, which means A do the act of kindness towards B without expecting B to reward her. This means the act is a voluntary form from A towards B, and the act is gratuitous because there was no mutual agreement between both parties. Lastly, the reward for the kindness shown will not be enforceable after the act was done. The law doesn't recognize such promise because the act was not a part of the contractual bargain. Thus, even if B doesn't fulfill his promise in rewarding A cannot sue B.
Thank you so much, Nadia, for repairing my shoe rack.
You're welcome.
I will pay you 50 ringgit for this.
Oh, thank you.
See you soon.
Yura!
Yes, Nadia.
Can you please give me 50 ringgit as you promised for repairing your shoe?
But you repair my shoe rack before I even promise anything. I didn't ask you to do it. So, can past consideration be a good consideration? Past consideration is generally considered invalid and cannot be used to construct a legally binding contract. As a result, consideration must be given in exchange for the other party's commitment or action. However, there are some situations in which accepting prior consideration is appropriate and creates a binding contract. This kind of prior consideration is recognized by three factors. First, consideration was given at the party's request. Second one, the payment will be made gradually as both parties agree. And the third one, the opposite party must be promised gradual payment in advance. Case of Rose Cola and Thomas 1842, the issue was whether a promise is enforceable after a transaction has been made without fresh consideration. In this case, the defendant sued a horse to the claimant, and the claimant made a promise that the horse is sound and free from bites. And the court ruled that the promise is unenforceable because it is considered as past consideration. The key principle in this case is in order for a promise to be legally binding, it needs to be supported by fresh consideration. Past consideration is invalid consideration.
Thomas,
Yes?
I am planning to buy a horse, but actually I don't know how to purchase it. Well, do you know where I can purchase it?
Are you kidding me, Rose Scholar? I do have a horse. Do you
Really?
like to buy it for me?
Yes, it's really interesting.
Okay. Deal.
After a week, Roscola found that the horse was ill-tempered and dangerous, and then he confronted Thomas.
Thomas, you promised me that the horse was sound and fine, but it turns out to be opposites. I want back my compensation right now.
Rose Scholar, I made the promise after I sold you the horse.
But it's supposed to be your job. You have to remind me that the horse was sick.
Excuse me? I don't even receive anything in written. And do I? You need to remember it by yourself.
Annoying.
What's the problem?
Your Honor, he sold me the horse and I purchased it. And he promised that the horse was sound and fine. But it turns out to be opposite. I want back my compensation. But Your Honor, it wasn't my mistake. The promise was made after he purchased it. And is it considered past considerations, isn't it?
But I spent a
Shut
lot
up,
of
you
money.
both. The court sided with Thomas because promise made after the contract is considered as past consideration, which is not enforceable in contract.
It's established that a promise to pay for past consideration is not enforceable in the contract law. In this case, Eastwood borrowed money for Blackburn to raise and educate Sarah. After Sarah got married to Kenyon, Kenyon promised to repay all the debt. However, he failed to fulfill his promise and Eastwood sued him. In the court held that Kenyon's promise is not legally binding because it was based on past consideration and making it invalid contract. So, want to know more? Let's watch this video.
Sarah, we don't have enough money to survive. I think I need to borrow money from my best friend, Blackburn. Hello? Blackburn? Is that you? Yes, it's me. Can you lend some money for me to raise Sarah and educate her? Yes. Thank you so much, Blackburn. I really appreciate it.
Wait, actually, I want to thank you for all the time you raised Sarah. And I promise you to repay all the debt that you have for all the time you raised Sarah.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, Daniel. Do you know, I still have lots of debt to pay to Blackburn.
Don't worry, I will take care of it.
So do you guys see the situation? So Kenyon started to pay Eastwood all of his debt, and then eventually he stopped, and that's what made this case interesting.
Kenyon, I have something to ask you. Why did you stop paying the debt? You have promised me to pay all the debt back.
Eastwood, you have to know that I will actually not legally bound to it. You had Sarah for so long, even before I made the promise.
You can't do that to me, Kenyon. I still have a lot of debt to pay to Blackbird. How can I pay that back to him?
I have heard from both of you. From my side, the court agreed with Kenyon. Moral obligations like helping someone out of kindness are not valid consideration for a contract.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, you're welcome.
So, we already learned about what is actually past consideration. But do you guys know that there are some exceptions of the rule of past consideration is no consideration? Want to know more? Let's see my explanation in the next video.
Let's move on to exception of the rule. Past consideration is no consideration. Exception of the rule means that the consideration is valid and enforceable by law. First one is provided at the promiser's request, which means the payment will be made in return. For example, the case of Lampley versus Brathwaite. In this case, Lampley's action in obtaining a pardon from the king was at the direct request of Brathwaite, with the implied understanding that the service would be paid for. This makes the consideration in the case valid even if the promise to pay is made later. For example, A is a freelance admin. A local business owner, B, asks A to create marketing work for his new cafe. A agreed and spent several days creating unique and creative ideas. In this scenario, even though B promised to pay A 500 ringgit came after he had already done the work, it can still be enforceable because request by promisor. B requested the service to make a marketing. And also, there is an implied understanding. There was an implied understanding that A would be compensated for his work. The second one is bill of exchange. Bill of exchange is basically a written order used primarily in international trade that binds one party to pay a fixed sum of money to another party on demand or at the predetermined date. Under Section 27 of the Bills of Exchange Act 1882, an antecedent debt or liability may be considered for receipt of a bill of exchange. For example, the case of Casey Patents 1892. In this case, Casey provided services as a manager for some patents owned by Stewart and Charlton. After Casey had already provided these services, Stewart and Charlton promised to give him 1/3 interest in the patents. They later argued that this promise was not binding because it was made after the services were provided, making it past consideration. However, the court held that Casey's services were always meant to be paid for, and the promise was simply formalizing this expectation. Therefore, the promise was enforceable because the services were provided with the understanding that they would be compensated. In the context of Casey's patents, if bill of exchange was applied, Casey can make the promise to get 1/3 interest in the patents in a formal way for additional security and making it easier to enforce the promise.
We just learned about the two cases. So, what is your commentary about it?
I think in Roscoe case, consideration must be provided in return of making a promise.
Exactly. In this case, the defendant sold a horse to the claimant, and after the sale, he promised that the horse was free from vice and sound. However, those promise was unenforceable by law because those promise was made after the transaction was complete.
Oh, Nura, how about the court decision?
I just googled about the court decision. The court held that the promise could not be binding since it lacked fresh consideration from the claimant, and the consideration was past, meaning it was not provided for exchange for the promise.
Oh, how about the Ashford and Canyon case? Can you explain more to us about it?
Yes, Eastwood and Canyon is also another case that talk about consideration must not be past, and the moral obligation cannot constitute valid consideration.
Other than that, Nura, consideration must be present and cannot merely rest on the benefits or morality. So, do you guys want to hear the court decisions from Nasiha?
Of course.
Okay, go on, Nasiha.